Welcome to the Business Spotlight. I'm Rick Plaskett, a certified leadership and business coach here in Columbus, Ohio. Today, I've got with me as a guest to this episode, Paul Tebben. He is the owner and creator of Kinexx Modular Construction. He's my guest today, and today we're going to talk about his business, his challenges, his best practices, and share a peek into what it's really like to build and operate a business. And I think you're going to enjoy Paul. He's got a little bit of what I would call a pattern disruptor business, and I don't want to steal any of his thunder. So before we get into letting him go, if this is the first time that you've been on the channel, please be sure to like and subscribe. Get notifications when we drop new conversations with other business owners just like Paul today. So, Paul, welcome and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, listen, give us so that the audience can know a little bit about you and what Connext is. Give us a little bit of your background of overview, who
Sure.
you are and
Yeah.
what your business does.
Yeah. So I'm an architect by trade. I kind of existed in the world of larger custom buildings, a little bit of I started a practice in 2008, an architecture practice, and we focused a lot on kind of smaller scale, kind of more client focused work in the residential market. Um, we we interfaced in that business with a lot of different people in the construction world and the real estate world, and so my network in the Chicago area, where I lived previously, was pretty expansive. And one of those really great connections was my partner Josh Braun, who was a general contractor, real estate professional, third generation real estate professional in Chicago. Um, we connected on some projects, and we started very schematically talking about why in a city like Chicago, where the greater majority, upwards of 70-80% of the residential lots, where they're the exact same size, give or take 6 inches to a foot. Why is nobody leveraging modular construction as a delivery method? Because the sites are predictable, the ability to conform to zoning restrictions, that's predictable to a large extent. And then we started looking at the affordable housing gap, and in Chicago, I think just recently they published, I think it's 120,000 units short, not just with affordable housing, but with housing in general. And so we saw a real problem, and affordable housing has been a problem everywhere in every city across the country. So it's nothing new, and we're not the first people to take a crack at it. But we thought that looking at this problem that people have really struggled to solve, and the problem has just exponentially increased over the last couple of decades. You can only squeeze so much juice out of a conventional construction project. And so we were exploring modular construction as a way to not just kind of alter the way that things are built, but to really change the game. I think the only way to sort of break through some of those thresholds that conventional construction presents is to really just change how you're thinking about it, to think about less of construction and more as manufacturing. And that's what we kind of on a wing and a prayer jumped into our business, and really kind of gave it a go. We had some really great people that we were lucky enough to surround ourselves with on the front end, and we've been learning as we go, but being really deliberate with our kind of steps of growth, and taking our bumps at a small scale, luckily initially, and scaling as fast as we can.
Super. Thanks, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, you mentioned a partner, Josh,
Yep.
and so the audience has a better understanding of the ground from which you're coming. What is your ownership structure? Are you, co-partners, and do you have outside investors, or are
We
you
do.
bootstrapping this?
No, well, it was bootstrapped initially. It was Josh and I initially in a small incubator facility, where we built our first 3 prototype homes,
Mhm.
kind of in a not so sightly industrial area outside of Chicago, southwest of the city. And I think when we moved into our current facility, we had 8 employees total, including Josh and I. And so we definitely bootstrapped it. We didn't have a bunch of capital to start with. And so we really just kind of, tried to treat the first couple of years of our existence as a kind of learning curve, learning opportunity for ourselves before we went heavily to market. So that how is the business structured? We have a lot of participants now. So we are initially it was Josh and I. We've brought on really great investors who are active. They're not just passive investors. At first, it was kind of friends and family with a small round, and it's increased from there. But we've still we think we've grown faster than probably we should have, given how much capital we've taken on. So it hasn't been a massive amount relative to other competitors, but yeah, we are lucky enough to have a lot of different active investors who are key components to our operation now.
Super. So listen, with that growth, I love when people use uh, grew fast, too fast. Investors, clearly you have people with a lot of expectations of the business, and what you've just shared is an environment where I'm sure today your role in the company is completely different than what it was when you first started. What is your current role? What is your superpower and your position on the team today?
Yeah, I think I have my title, and then I have, like all business owners, I have a lot of kind of soft responsibilities that don't directly align with my titles. But I'm the chief design officer. I'm a co-founder, chief design officer, and I'm the director of product development. And so superpower is the ability, I think, to sort of act. My department acts as the kind of linchpin for not just the creative development of the product, but then the sort of the flow of information to all the different kind of key components of the process, and that extends all the way to sort of vendor relationships, our procurement processes, kind of overseeing and being sort of administrating the administrative backbone to the work in the factory to make sure that quality control is maintained. And so we treat our own kind of, even though it's our own crew, we treat that relationship as much as we can as the same way that an architect would review an outside general contractor. So we're kind of auditing the work. We are supportive, and obviously it's much kind of more streamlined and faster because we're 100 feet away from the people with swinging the hammers. But we are I think we there are a lot of key components. We tend to be positioned kind of central to that because it's such a fast-paced environment that the even more so than typical construction projects, the drawings, the information exchange, the ability to communicate properly visually to people is really key.
You have gone the full gambit from it sounds like at some point you're down on the assembly line, and another point you are strategic envisioning. If you were to look at your role today, share with the audience here just a rough breakdown percentage wise. How much of this is actually in the business, and then how much of this is on the business and strategic visioning, planning, etc.? What would you
Yeah,
say that percentage breakdown is?
that's a great question. I think when it was, the first 2 to 3 years, I think it was in the business every day, 95 to 98% to 2%, which was always a frustration. And I'm sure a lot of business owners can relate to that. It is, especially when you're bootstrapping something that's scaling
Mhm.
quickly, it's you don't have the bandwidth, you don't have the personnel, and so it's a constant effort of putting out fires and making sure that you keep things moving in the best way you can. And so I think just in the past 12 months, I think we finally started to have the ability to sort of step back and work on the business. And so I think now it's probably it's probably 60-40 currently. It'll probably not always be that luxurious for us. I think it'll be probably somewhere in the 70-30 range, ideally, as we move forward. But as we it's like you scale, then you get a little comfortable and you become self-reflective, and then you scale again. And so those percentages I imagine will fluctuate as we go to our next degree of scaling.
Absolutely. Listen, everything changes. You get another city added in, and all of a sudden you're looking at a whole lot of strategy and and large scale planning.
Hmm.
Then once that's in place, you got to make sure that the product is still what you wanted to put your name on. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that. And it is flexible, but 60/40, that's to be commendable. Absolutely. Hey, listen, Paul, you shared with me in our last conversation that Kinexx is not only I mean, it's a pattern disruptor in the way that you create the house, the housing, the structure, um, and how it's delivered. But at the same time, you're flexible. So it's for me, if I'm a business owner, or I'm sorry, if I'm a homeowner, once I get the keys to the house, it's my house. And I don't really know what's behind the walls or how it was put together. And so you differentiate yourself from your competition in the method in which you produce that. But you also said that there's differing degrees that you can actually deliver value. I guess that's the best word.
Yeah, no,
Can
that's
you
yeah.
elaborate that on that a little bit on what's your menu of, I think you used the word agility. Explain how that goes to the audience.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I think we focus a lot more on being a building system than we do a building product. And so that system yields products, but the idea is that we really focus on designing the system. And so we are this kind of really multifaceted kit of parts. You imagine this toolkit of physical elements that can be leveraged to build a building. And so we are known most extensively, and our launch to market was a kind of turnkey modular product. So when I say modular, when people use the word modular, it's usually a volumetric modular, which is like a box full of space, for lack of a better description. Um, but if you imagine our process, our manufacturing process, as starting with a bunch of raw material like studs and floor joists and kind of sticks and sheet goods, let's say, there's different touch points along that process from there until that turnkey product that if one was to stop the production or the development of that product and extract it at that moment, it becomes a product in its own right and a value proposition to a completely different type of clientele. And so when we say agility, I think the agility is not just the ability to address a bunch of different design requirements and different market requirements that may change from a suburban or an urban environment. We do have that agility, but the agility I'm talking about is more the multitude of value propositions along that stage of development. And so if you imagine starting at those sticks and sheets, those sticks and sheets become panels. Those panels become kind of core and shell boxes or modules, and then those are fleshed out then with mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and kind of to a finish ready degree, and then they're finished. They're tile and flooring and all of the stuff we know from our living environments. The clientele and the needs that each of those touch points satisfy is very it seems similar, but it's very different. The panels, for example, if sold just as panels, satisfy the need of rapid enclosure, and that can extend to mid-rise, high-rise, a whole multitude of different project types that don't necessarily lend themselves to volumetric modular construction. And so that's a huge value proposition to a totally different type of client than, say, the other end of that spectrum, or the end of our process, which is the residential homeowner, the one-off, like a residential developer who's building 10 homes scattered site in an urban environment. Those are very different needs and very different. The value that each of those stages represent is very different, and the cost structure and the cost efficiency, the ability to deliver more quickly varies between those four different
Mhm.
steps. Does that
What
does
I
that is
heard,
that clear?
I think so. Let me repeat back to you. And again,
Yeah,
I'm just the outside lay person.
sure.
What I'm hearing is actually in each of the steps of your production, if you were to stop it, you actually have a different customer You could have a entire project manager that only wants the panels. You could have a GC that wants an entire enclosured frame, and then you could have the residential owner that wants the entire finished product move in, and all the paint, walls, and mechanics are working. Is that a fair summary of what I think I heard you say?
Yeah, it is. I think they're
Awesome.
each of the clientele are a little different. I mean, you have a lot of very seasoned builders. We've had builders. I'll give just one anecdotal example. They build three flats, three unit buildings in Chicago. They're prevalent throughout, the whole city. So they will do 15 a year, but they say they want to ramp up and scale up to 50 a year. And so what we provide is this rapid ability to have a full building enclosure that takes weather out of the equation, which is a huge variable in the Midwest, especially. And so they have their own teams, they have their own electricians, they have their own. So it's just the ability to get to a point that normally takes 2 to 3 months to sort of achieve in a construction schedule. We can do in a week or two. And have their people cycling through, and so it allows them to deliver in higher volume. So allows us to do what we do really well, and allows them to do what they already do really well, just much faster and in greater volume.
Super. Thanks, Paul. That really
Mhm.
clarifies it. It also brings me to the point of marketing because what you just shared with me, you actually have 3 or 4 different target markets in order to be known in each of those products and be successful. And you could develop
Mhm.
each of those products into an entire separate division. What in marketing is working for you right now, and what do you know is not working?
Well, I think just the focus on marketing, just zooming way out, is really, it's a weakness that we've had, and it's been a weakness that's just born out of bandwidth. We haven't had because of the way we started with a low kind of lean capital investment on the front end. Marketing has always taken a back seat. Unfortunately, we've been lucky that the kind of organically pipeline has kind of presented itself, and clientele comes to us. However, I think the focus on marketing is huge. I think the ability to really target, I think you hit the nail on the head. Our goal is now that we've had this, we talked about the 60-40% split. It's the first time we've had that, and so this is the time that we've really had the ability to be self-reflective and understand and strategize how we might go after those clientele in each of those 4 discrete zones. It's sort of you get going and you do something, and sometimes you don't realize what's in the cracks of what you're doing, and how valuable those things are. And so I think, yeah, the goal would be to really develop and apply sales and marketing directly to those different, sort of identify the clients that are discrete to each of those buckets, and really go after it. um, there's a whole lot of strategies, one-on-one relationships, client education, digital marketing is obviously huge, but it's really, I think we've been operating on the sort of if you build it, they will come strategy. And what we realize is, we sort of have to, we got to get out there. We have to be proactive and not reactive. So
You,
I think we're developing those, and admittedly, we are not very sophisticated yet. I think we've done, the best that we can with what we have, but we have a lot more to do.
an observation, Paul, if I might.
Yeah.
You have the superpower, you just haven't applied it in the area of marketing. Your architecture background, your design background, you're looking at the way and plans for delivering value to a customer.
Hmm.
Your marketing plan's got to be the same thing.
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
going forward, yes, you said, kind of grew organically. Going forward, do you have a marketing plan?
Yeah. I mean, we've worked really hard putting together a kind of an EOS strategy, and it really kind of we've done it at different touch points, a little more sophisticated at a little less
Hmm.
sophisticated on the earlier phases, at a little more recently. So yeah, we do, and we're developing that. We have a creative director who's just brilliant and talented, kind of
Hmm.
multifaceted, and so I think some of it is our own our ability to direct marketing funds towards actually
Mhm.
getting that message out there to the right people. The other big thing is just sales. Like we're like dedicating staff members
That's right.
specifically to those four buckets and making them masters of that domain. But I think it is, even though for us it's all the same parts of the same process. I think we want to think of them as four kind of separate, you said divisions, for parallel
Mhm.
efforts that don't have to necessarily you know uh always march to the same beat. I think there's different cadence and different kind of needs with each of those
Yeah.
that can be expanded.
As you shared that, Paul, I'm just wondering, what would 2025 look like for Kinexx if you had four separate marketing plans for those markets,
Mhm.
really dug down into what were the driving factors. EOS is a fabulous tool. Building the plan and getting everybody on board. A micro piece of that is the marketing plan,
Mhm.
and having the same robustness there. I'm just wondering what results would be. I think you'd probably be readjusting your goals
Yeah.
upward when you spend a little more focused time on, got four areas of marketing, not just one product now. I
Right.
think that's great. It sounds fantastic. I'm excited for you, Paul.
Yeah, it's
Um,
it's it's a very, it's an overwhelming kind of heavy lift, but it's one that we're really excited about. I mean, I think any business that affords the people involved the inability to ever get too comfortable. I think that it is really exciting and thrilling, and so I think the reward of kind of always having these kind of big problems to strategize and work through on the horizon, regardless of what you've done in the past, is that's me personally, I'm wired. I get bored when things become plain out, and so we luckily or not, we don't see any of that on the horizon. We only see kind of new challenges, and that's pretty cool.
Super. Listen, you've spent a lot of time with us talking about the business as it is today. Let's
Hmm.
fast forward now. You've mentioned EOS, a planning system, and looking into the future. And clearly, you don't like waking up and doing the same thing every single day. So, when you look at the future, what do you see the business? What's it look like in 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, it's interesting because right now we've scaled we're in a 60,000 square foot space, but everything is under one roof. And so just to give like 20 seconds of context here, modular is really good when it's good, and it applies really well as a value proposition in certain scenarios and not so much others. And I think one of the values that we have not leveraged as much as we should or could or should is the ability to set up production facilities in areas where labor costs are lower. The way that you compete on cost with conventional construction, there are a lot of ways that you do it in terms of decreasing the construction timeline and being more predictable, lowering a client's financing costs. But if you want to get into really lowering the costs of the project, the labor and materials, materials is easy. You buy in bulk and you have more buying power and you secure better pricing. But labor, the advantage that it offers is setting up shop in areas where labor rates are not, are competitive or more competitive than say a place like Chicago. And so I think we see the 3 to 5 year goal is to take our process and sort of fragment it very strategically and from a kind of all under one roof to a hub and spoke model. Where we can really ramp up what we're already pretty good at, but automate it, which is our panelization and all of our subcomponents, all the kind of the tricky and more difficult pieces of the building.
Mhm.
So create that as a hub, but then be able to ship that flat packed, meaning not volumetric yet. Ship that whole kind of kit of of engineered components to a bunch of satellite facilities regionally that are smaller, leaner, meaner, not as much capex to set up. But then, so they don't become boxes full of air until they get closer to the job site. And so that's our way to control the variable of transportation costs, because that's one thing we have that conventional construction doesn't have. Is if we're shipping around Chicago, it's negligible, right? Within a 50 miles of where we are. But if we're shipping 200 miles or 300 miles, paying for truckloads of boxes that are filled with air, you never want to be transporting in that way. And so it becomes really costly and becomes cost prohibitive. And it takes away any of your competitive costing. And so the hub and spoke really allows us to kind of specialize our facilities, have more facilities, but smaller and more specialized. But it also allows us to offer job creation in different local markets where we would build, and lower the risk of, instead of setting up like a mega factory, and let's say we came to
Mhm.
Columbus, instead of setting up a huge factory and having that risk of, what if the pipeline runs out here, what if it fails, you set up something smaller that's easy to take down and repurpose elsewhere. And so the risk goes down, the reward goes up, and there's all sorts of tertiary benefits in that model. So that's where we're headed.
Okay, super.
Yeah.
From the business of Kinexx, um, what's your approach to setting those goals? How many goals do you have at any one time? How do you document those and capture those? And what time frame are you looking at? I asked specifically 3 to 5 years, but many people are looking at different time zones in there. What's your rhythm of setting those objectives, whether it's goals or milestones? And how do you do that with your team?
Yeah, I think that obviously the further out you go, the more kind of thumb in the air it becomes, and so you try really hard to set those long-term goals, and they become kind of um, they become sort of your North Star as you're moving forward. And obviously you have to allow yourself the pivots if something changes. But I think we focus a lot more on the quarterly, the annual, and then 3 years is about as far out as we spend a lot of time on. The quarterly, we have quarterly meetings. We have kind of leadership meetings where we obviously fold in, I mentioned active investors. We have a lot of people, luckily, that are much smarter than us, quite frankly, that we fold in.
Mhm.
And so we have quarterly meetings. We have a weekly executive meeting where we track those goals to hit our quarterly and annual. And so that's, we do a pretty good job, but it's, that's an area where it gives us the opportunity, one, to hold all of it, each other accountable. Everybody needs to be accountable to someone, and so we're accountable to each other. And so we target those kind of, we do, different departments have like biweekly sprints that cumulatively build up to those quarterly goals. And so those sprints we evaluate on a sprint level.
Mhm.
And we do a pretty good job of tracking those. We don't all, there are things that change, that priorities shift, and sometimes it's a whole new client that represents a whole new challenge for us will come in, and it's a very deliberate sidestep from the goals we set 2 weeks ago, but it's productive,
Mhm.
but it gives us those touch points every couple of weeks where we can all kind of track that progress.
That's fabulous. As you were sharing that to me, I was envisioning you've got a rhythm of communication. It's almost like a football team. You've got specific meetings that are like huddles where everybody gets in, who's doing what, who needs help, break.
Mhm. Yeah.
On the very next thing. And then the rhythm either expands or contracts based on how fast you're moving forward. Bringing in a strategic meeting, it doesn't have to be annual. If you're growing and you're growing quickly, or you're expanding in your spug hub and spoke. Boy,
Yeah,
that's
there
got to
you
be edited out. That has
go.
got to be edited out.
That's all right. It's still early.
a, a hub and spoke, it would seem to me that sometimes that would require those strategic meetings to be held more frequently because you are moving much more. I'd love to dive in deeper on, just exactly how you do those, because I think that's an important part of your meeting, not your meetings, your success in being able to communicate is
Yeah.
as long as there's good communication back and forth and people feel like they're pulling the canoe in the exact same direction, then you've got people working together instead of working against each other.
Yeah,
Um,
it provides a forum too for people to kind of scream and yell when they need help. A lot of times you set out with goals for your department. You try really hard to estimate the time commitment and the personnel commitment, but sometimes you're wrong, and so it gives us at least a reasonably frequent timeline for someone to raise their hand and say, "Hey, this isn't working out the way we thought. It's going to require a lot more. We need help, or we need the team to help us reprioritize our goals." In a productive way, so that we're not letting people down, but we're focusing on the hot ticket items as a priority. And so I think it's a nice. Obviously, we have the day to day. We're on a Teams
mhm.
Microsoft Teams platform, and everybody is in you know constant yell for help or yell for assistance or information kind of mode, which is great. So we have that kind of casual day to day communication, like a lot of businesses have across different departments, but we are. I think the having the meeting for us is really important because everything is fast paced, and having that moment where that you have to present your progress for your department. It kind of leading up to that meeting, it puts the internal pressure on you and your team to kind of make good, and or at least have a real answer about why you haven't made good.
Thank you for sharing that, Paul. It sounds to me, anyhow, I understand how you achieve your agility in the end product through agility is actually your entire culture and your environment that you've created. So, with the communication and with the understanding, people can change and change easily and quickly. I
Yep.
think that's a fabulous. I would call that a superpower that you definitely should protect and cultivate. It's clear that not everyone that I coach, anyhow, has that same understanding of how communication and coordination, let's just call it
Mhm.
coordination, can actually improve your agility and your profitability. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing that with us today, Paul. So listen,
Happy
audience,
to.
we've certainly covered an awful lot of ground today, and it's just fabulous. For those of you that are watching, I highly encourage you to save this one. Paul shared a number of things, and I think every time you listen to this, you're going to find just another new nugget. Come back to it as many times as you can. Watch it. There's always a lot of great nuggets there. As we continue and just about to wrap up this interview, Paul, I'd like to project to you and subject you to a section that I wrap up with. It's called rapid fire questions. I just want what's on top of your mind. Share, first thing that comes to mind with the audience out there. You ready for that one?
Yeah.
Super.
Be
Uh, uh,
I'm not always quick on the draw, but I'll try my best to not embarrass myself here.
Listen, new information is never an embarrassment. You never know where it's going to be beneficial. So,
Yeah.
first question for you, Paul, is what's the key to success?
I think we've talked about it probably ad nauseum. Agility for us is everything. And so having the ability to leverage our product to a whole host of markets that we know and markets that we can't imagine yet is really big. And the ability to diversify our income streams, the agility of that system to be able to be leveraged in ways that we haven't yet, I think that's the key to our next kind of round of success, we hope.
Super. If you had one piece of advice to give to another business owner, what would that piece be today?
I think probably, I guess, three things. Be humble. I mean, that's my attitude towards life, but especially towards business. Surround yourself with people. Be humble enough to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, or fill in gaps. Kind of the self awareness to fill in gaps that are pretty glaring. Ours was manufacturing. We were an architect and a construction professional that started a manufacturing company and only realized it was a manufacturing company a year in, and it was a moment of kind of panic but excitement. And so we brought in some great people that had a wealth of experience in manufacturing, and we'll continue to do that. Yeah, I think the last thing, it's which I'm sure many people say, but I believe in it very strongly, is just don't be afraid to fail. I think people have analysis paralysis sometimes, and it's really easy to overthink and kind of bind yourself into, based on the anxiety of will this work or will it not, bind yourself into inaction. And sometimes you just have to do it and learn from it. And that's been, we've been lucky that, that attitude in our business has paid off. I know sometimes the failures can hurt a little bit more. Ours have been minor, but I still think it's the right way to sometimes you have to use a little bit of faith in yourself and your team as your fuel without necessarily knowing what the outcome will be.
Absolutely. Most of my audience knows me as a veteran, grew up, served in the Army,
Hmm.
and on the firing range, there was two ways. You could do ready, aim, fire, or when you really needed to, it was ready, fire, aim.
Hmm.
You put the first bullet down range, you can see where it lands and adjust from there, and it's much
Yeah,
faster than trying to
that's
get a
a
perfect crosshair on the target and hit it the first time out.
that's
So
a that's a fantastic analogy. Yeah, I've never
yeah,
heard that, but that's a great analogy. Yeah.
yeah. When you have the team um, culturally able to say, hey, a near miss is not a bad thing. We can adjust from there, as opposed to having to be perfect out of the chute every single time. That
Yeah,
I think that's
our partners, which we didn't touch on, yeah, they're kind of leading the charge for our growth. LaFair Capital, they work with a lot of professional athletes, and really great, talented people.
mhm,
And uh, one of the mantras that is common that they reference a lot is you don't professional athletes, the elite professional athletes, you either win or you learn. There's no such thing as losing. And so those failures are the they end up being the lifeblood of your growth, because you learn more from screwing up than you do from succeeding.
exactly. So listen, as you're talking about learning, Paul,
Mhm.
what would be, you know, I like to use the word book, but book is dating me. What's a book, a TED Talk, a video, or whatever that you have read recently that you would highly recommend to another business owner?
Yeah, interestingly, so I should read more than I do. I read, articles. I find I have three little girls also, so in the midst of kind of, the pressures of the business and the time suck of everything that we do there, I'm trying to be a good dad. And so my over the last 7 years, my ability to read full books has diminished. But I think one thing that's been really impactful recently, and I think probably a lot of people have already seen it, but I rewatched recently the commencement speech that Steve Jobs gave, I think, to Stanford, I believe. I might be messing that up, but he talks about the not pressuring yourself to understand the value of what you're doing in the moment. And so, but having the faith that your dots will connect in the future in a productive way. And he referenced when he dropped out of school, he took a typography class. And it was just something he was interested in and had no bearing on what he intended to do. But then when he created he and his team created the first Mac, the graphic interface of that folded in all of the love for what he had learned in that class, and sort of made it the kind of design powerhouse that then everyone, all the other computer manufacturers copied, and operating system software developers copied, and it is now what we, the digital world that we live in. But it's all because of that random act that he made of just out of interest. And the lesson is pursue what you're passionate about. Don't worry about how it will fuel your life productively, but trust in the fact that the dots will connect at some point productively between that and other things that you're doing.
Super, super.
Mhm.
Final rapid fire question.
Mhm.
If you could choose one area of your business that you could immediately improve, and tomorrow you wake up and it is no longer an issue for you, what would that area be?
Sales and marketing,
Sales and
100%. Yeah,
marketing.
hands down. Yeah, I think having people kind of really aggressively pursuing clientele and fueled by a really sophisticated marketing material and strategies, I think that's something that we've always just craved the ability to get to, and we just, because of how things have went for us, be it time or finances, we've just never got to. So I think that's one that's like, it just can't be overlooked.
Awesome. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
I would agree. The best product in the world, if nobody knows about it, it's not going to
Yeah.
be a business. it's not
Right.
going to be a business. So, hey,
Yeah.
listen, Paul, before we go today, if the audience wants to get in touch with you, what's their best way of contacting you? What's your preferred method?
Email's probably best because I'm sort of anal retentive about, tracking tracking. It's the one area of my life that I find to be very organized. So tracking kind of responses and making sure. So I think it drives me crazy when I have something flagged that I haven't responded to, and so that's one surefire way to get a response reasonably quickly because it's in my face constantly. So that's Ptebben at Kinexx KINEXXMC.com. So feel free to email
And
me
that's
anytime.
also on your website, right,
It
Paul?
is. Yep. Yeah. You can
Yeah.
find it through our website, kinexxmodular.com. We're on a bunch of the socials but yeah, the website is a great way to kind of learn more about us. And, I'm happy. As you can tell, I'm a nerd and I really, enjoy talking about what we do. And so anybody that's interested in learning more, I jump at those opportunities because I think, it reinvigorates my passion for what I'm doing when I get to talk about it with other people who are interested. And so I welcome any questions or conversations that people want to have.
Awesome, awesome. Paul, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your journey. You've given a number of really great golden nuggets here that I'm sure everybody is going to be interested in at least learning and seeing how they can apply it. And thank you to you, the audience, for watching today. You never know what you might find and be inspired by listening. A couple of the areas where we went today, Paul, was not what we talked about last time, and I thought that was awesome.
Great.
You've really shared. So I hope this interview was valuable to you, Paul, and thank you for your time. Audience, I hope you find some nuggets in here that were valuable as well. Make it a great day and bye for now.